Do parents wait and see if their child develops autism? This is a major health problem with deafening silence on causes. What's happening to the research? It's sitting there on PubMed and in Google Scholar and all the research databases, and it's an absolute mystery to me as to how that has not reached the medical community. In my mind, we have enough reliable information to take some basic, risk-free protective steps. Most people, including medical and other professions, believe nothing can be done. So would parents like this information, especially if they have an autistic child already and they're worried about having a second one? I think so. And stress is also a factor that affects newborns. So if you're a second-time mum, your first child's autistic, and you're wondering how the second one's going to be, that's a stress factor. So the cortisol levels are higher, and of course we know what happens. Cortisol affects everything. So risk factors come into two categories: what we can do something about and what we can't do anything about. So these are the non-modifiable risk factors. Parent age, obesity, diabetes, autism already in the family, IVF, maternal infections, and it is the second trimester in which maternal infections are likely to negatively affect the child. We know that is possible because of the experience the world had with rubella. And so as homeopaths, when we're taking a history of an autistic child, we're going to ask about maternal infections, and that includes the flu vaccine or any other vaccine. So check for infection and timing in your case taking. So the Global Burden of Diseases study of 2015 talks about, the outdoor air pollution. We're all breathing it in, particulate matter, heavy metals, chemicals, plastics, you name it. Modifiable factors. These are the things that we can change. We can significantly reduce our exposure to known toxins. We can gradually phase out harmful products in our homes and increase the use of safer ones, and find alternatives to medications for common ailments. And in many cases, that is homeopathy. And of course, if you're going to be treating pregnant women with already having an autistic child, you want to know if they've had a cold. You want to know if they've had the flu, and to give the remedies to counteract any potential negative effects. Homeopathy is safe during pregnancy and breastfeeding. Now, it just so happens I found a lot of fairly depressing information about the toxicity inside our homes. Gas cooking and heating, wood burners, furniture off-gassing when you buy the nice new lounge suite, and building materials. So the worst possible time for a family to do a renovation is when mum falls pregnant. There's a lot to change in our homes, and the reason for that, we'll talk a little bit more shortly, is the ventilation in a home is much less than the ventilation in the outside air. Chemical exposures we've gone into are endless, and these are the known ones, but we can change our ways with those. And food contaminants comes into the molds and the fungi, so that can be in the grains especially, and GMO corn and soy are the worst. Drinking water, microplastics, bacteria, aluminium, and medications we've mentioned. This section is about reducing autism risk before pregnancy and during pregnancy. And the first thing is to limit toxic exposures. Remember, there's no test to diagnose autism. And the confounding thing with autism is that there are so many different reasons why one child might be autistic. We can't avoid environmental toxins. We can reduce our exposure to them. And good levels of nutrients can help offset the levels of toxins. And we really don't want to see parents wondering if their child's going to become autistic, even if they haven't got an autistic child in the family. You've seen the graph and how much the situation is escalating. Avoiding toxins. We need to look after women from the time they conceive. It's unbelievable to many people that there's so much toxicity in our environment that has been allowed by health authorities. It's difficult for them to accept because it challenges their feelings of trust. They want to trust the health department and the government. And so when some people like us say, oh, you want to reduce your exposure to this or that, they think, well, if it was that bad, then they wouldn't let it happen. They wouldn't let it happen. The exposures from within the home are increased by 1,000 times due to lack of ventilation. 1,000 times more exposure to 1 gram of a release of a toxin inside the house. And in October 2018, there was a Grand Designs episode about this couple who had these two, as I remember when I saw the program, puny little boys who both suffered from extreme asthma and allergies. They had been on all the cortisones and things that their little bodies could tolerate. And the parents decided to build another house and make it a non-toxic one. So they used building materials for everything. Everything was tested for its toxicity, etc. And they created what they said was Britain's first hypoallergenic house, or probably the first well-known one. So they were having multiple emergency admissions to hospital. And after how Kevin McLeod comes back into the home afterwards, and they said the parents were so pleased. The children were off most of their medication and they were just having the occasional episode, an asthma attack. And the University of York came and measured the air quality. And the VOCs are the volatile organic compounds. They're also, you can measure them in products like paints and things too. And they said that the air quality in the house was 70% better. And there's a study there, indoor air pollution, a global health concern. So what does that tell us? That we need to change all our heating systems and our cooking systems, or we can open the windows and be aware of the ventilation and keep your kids away from the gas cookers and that kind of thing. So from taking a case point of view, you want to know what sustaining causes are, and they might be simple things like, having a cooker and a fireplace in the same room and, it's a cold area and all the windows are closed. Reducing toxic exposure at home, there's lots of things to do. Lots of ways we can reduce the number of chemicals our bodies are dealing with. And incidentally, this is for adults too. The rates of cancer are going up and all sorts of other things, autoimmune diseases. And some of that will be caused by the levels of toxic influences that our bodies are grappling with. So choose electric cooking if you get a chance. And one thing everyone can avoid is the non-stick cookware. And it's still, you go through the aisle of a supermarket and there's all the non-stick cookware hanging on the shelf. It's nice and cheap. Although I have seen recently an enamelled one, non-stick cookware, non-Teflon, in the supermarket.
They have stoneware now.
Stoneware. Yes, I checked out the stoneware, and there is a film on that too. So you have to, I mean, I'm not saying, but when you see a new non-stick product, do your homework. But some of the upmarket cookware now, it's costly, but it's definitely safe to use, and it's non-stick. I don't mind stainless steel myself, but don't skimp on cost with your cookware. Avoid perfumed products. You know, it's very hard to do because everything has to smell beautiful. But when you smell the perfume, you're breathing in chemicals. It's as simple as that. Insect sprays. When I used to go and stay with my parents, who are now passed away, they had this can of insect spray that would release this. It was automatic. Every hour it would squirt down. So we have to be creative, and insects are really annoying, but our health is more important. Use non-toxic fumigants for white ant. You can get hormonal, instead of getting the house bombed to get rid of the white ant and whatever other bugs that you don't like. You can get these, there are non-toxic alternatives, and we used to get a hormonal one, so the ants or whatever would carry them back to the nest, and that would stop them reproducing. And garden chemicals, an absolute minefield. So it's hard to tell gardeners not to use certain products. Permaculture and companion planting is a really good idea. So there is a lot we can do. Protective and safer products in the home. Replace plastics with glass, ceramic, silicone, and ceramic or glass only in the microwaves, because not only is the plastic permeating your food, when you open the microwave, there's all these microplastics in the air. And you can get there are very specialised cleaning cloths now that you only need water for most things. And soaps and natural fibre clothing. So don't know if you saw the War on Waste, Craig Roycastle do a microbiome test or gut test, and they found synthetic fibres in his body. So natural, like all the synthetic fibres that we use do disintegrate, and we are exposed to them. I don't have any studies on the indoor shoes off policy, but I did see one where if people who make you take your shoes off at the door, it stops you tramping in. If you've been walking, wherever you've been walking, and the dust from your shoes is on your house floor, and then you get the vacuum cleaner out and circulates all the air everywhere. We don't really know what's there. So shoes off policy is a simple way of reducing that. Water filters and air filters, and HEPA vacuum cleaner, where I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. Choose your personal care products wisely. I saw this photo, and I have a 21-year-old daughter, and she loves cosmetics. And fortunately, she reads labels, and I'm her mother, so she knows about it. But it's like the cosmetics that kids of that age, who in a few years may become mothers, it's so important to get them using safe products. Now, I have got some labels here that I'm recommending, because Herbon is a very good company that was it started in the 80s, and the products were developed by industrial chemists for people who were allergic. And they've increased their range. I think their washing powder has like a eucalyptus smell. They have some personal care products now. They do soap, deodorant, shampoo, conditioner, body lotion. It's very no frills. It's not very interesting, but it's safe. So, the reason I'm recommending it is because it's really hard to find safe products that aren't organic, boutique style, super expensive type of thing. And so we like supporting this company, and they're good to deal with. You can bulk buy. You can buy some products in 20 litres, share it with your friends if you want to. And I think it does work out more economically to do that as well. Water filter, an essential item for every home. You can get under the sink water filters that are costly, although we were walking around Camaret yesterday, and there's a water shop that's been there for about 30, 40 years in Camaret, and they have a number of water filters, and their under the sink one was how much, John? Started at $700. So it's not out of the question. And when you think of how much people spend in a year on bottled water, it's not really an expense at all. This particular company we deal with, and the reason we deal with them is that they do the research. In fact, Fiona Proven is a homeopath, and she works for them up in Queensland. And I can call up there when the PFAS news hit about the fact that we've all got 98% in our blood and things. I'm on the phone saying, does your filter out that? And they can tell me exactly, as long as the pH of the water is this, and yes, it does. And so this is something that kids like using. We've got one in our clinic, and the kids like using it. And over time, your cost of water per litre is very small. So the ceramic filter, which is the little bulb at the top, this here is a ceramic. And then there's all these filters, carbon type, 3 or 4 different types of stones here. And then the remineralizing stones are here, because the problem with filtering water, if you filter out the minerals, then you have an acidic product. So it's very important to get this balance, and they've done a lot of work on getting that formula right. And if they're very supportive of their customers, and they say to anyone, if you can get 4 sales and, sell them, we'll come and put a free one in your school classroom. So they're very community minded, and I think that the level of research and the information they offer their customers is really great. And an air purifier. This is a Dyson product. There are others, but the reference here is the book Invention by James Dyson. And after I read that, I think that I had more confidence in the air filters that he does. And HEPA stands for high efficiency particulate air. And so he says, he's basically getting rid of all the dust, pollen, mold, and bacteria. And one of these is around $1,000. They do have a superior model that's a bit more than that. I've seen people move house, move town, rip up all the carpets and put down other flooring. And that's all fine, but that's tens of thousands of dollars. Or you could get an air filter. And incidentally, the HEPA filters are what airplanes use in the cabins. And that helped to explain why flying was not a high risk during COVID. It was minimal. And there's this book called Healthy Home, Healthy Family. Now, this book has been out for a long time, and this lady, Nicole Bilsma, has dedicated her life to reducing toxicity in the home. She's a building biologist, and I think since she wrote this, she has done a lot of, she's done a PhD in various things. So she's a great resource. So you just Google her name and you'll see lots and lots of different references. Reducing chemical load from food. So there is a way that I used to soak my some of my products in salted water, just instinctively. And then I saw it's a thing. The Food Revolution Network has got, if you've got this much water, you can put this much baking soda and salt, soak your vegetables in, and it will reduce quite dramatically the chemical residue on the surface of the plant. It won't take out the glyphosate that's in the cells, but so there's a lot we can do to reduce that load. I like to support farmers markets, and I think it's great to ask them, what do you put on your produce? And whatever their answer is, that you've asked the question, and hopefully that they get an idea of what their customers are wanting. But if you buy organic, it tells your retailer what you want, and the lines of organic products in the supermarkets have gone through the roof, and you'll quite often notice they've got their organic lines and the hole is empty. People, if it's easy for people, they like buying organic and reducing their chemical load. This is a favourite book of mine, One Magic Square. You don't have to have a big space. 3 feet by 3 feet will do. And it makes growing your own manageable. And of course, it's educational and fun for kids. And the high chemical residue foods are often the leafy greens and the things like the fruits and raspberries. And raspberries and strawberries are great container plants. And lemon tree is good too, very pretty. And, you know, you see lots of material on doing balcony and roof gardens now. So chemo prevention is the term for protecting babies, unborn babies, from harm using protective nutrients. This is where the most difference can be made. And ideally, you start mothers on doing this before conception. That is an ideal, but okay. Tests remove the guesswork. We don't know what someone's levels of any nutrient are until we've tested them. So there's quite a lot actually that can be done through your GP. When a blood test is done, it's an in-the-moment level. Right? So that's what this person's blood level is of this element on this particular day. With the hair mineral analysis and the oligoscan, the spectrophotometry, you're measuring tissue, the levels of nutrients in tissue. So with hair mineral analysis, it's showing you what the body has excreted, which gives you a good understanding of what's going on in the body. And when you're testing the tissue through spectrophotometry, you're seeing what has been absorbed into the cells. And with hair, you get a picture of, over the previous 3 months, nutrient levels. And also any complementary therapist can order blood tests now. If you do it through your doctor, it's on Medicare, and otherwise it's user pays. So integrative practitioners can do the tissue tests, and they can test for heavy metals, fluoride, iodine, zinc, vitamin B9, vitamin D, and so on. And then you've got your organic tests, acid tests, and that shows the urinary metabolites of toxins. That's showing what's happening in the metabolism of this individual and where the differences need to be made. And the reports are very detailed, and you get a lot of recommendations based on what's happening, and it's never just one element. They say this is low because that's high, and probably taking that would make a difference. So it's a really great experience, and it's a great experience to do it on yourself and get an idea. And microbiome testing can't be overestimated as how helpful that can be, because sometimes you see a gut infection that you never knew was there. Like you might be hammering away with probiotics, and you'll find that actually they need an antibiotic for a gut infection or something like that. The other thing it can happen is you can be taking lactobacillus, which is really good, but your lactobacillus might be through the roof, and you might be really lacking in another one. So for someone with a significant health issue, it's a really good idea to have the microbiome done, and it opens up a whole world of treatment possibilities. And of course, homeopathically, we can address that too. Preconception and pregnancy essentials. So gut health, glutathione, B6, 9 and 12, vitamin D, zinc, iodine. I do believe in this day and age, taking a normal pregnancy supplement is not enough. We really want to know what is needed on an individual basis. When you show someone a test result of any test, it improves compliance. So if you can show someone they need more zinc or they need more vitamin D, and there it is on the piece of paper, you're going to get a lot more compliance from your patient. And the other thing about testing is that often you see people on a box of supplements costing them a fortune, and they're taking all this stuff and they've got no idea if that's what they actually need or not. So it can actually be more economical to find out what your specific needs are and just take those supplements. Otherwise, it's guesswork. And people have the notion that because it's natural, it must be okay. We have the ability now to treat with focus. I've yet to see a patient with too much zinc. I don't know that they exist. And all the supplements are best given in the first trimester. So the earlier we can reach pregnant women, the better. And deficiencies are obstacles to cure. So diet, of course, is crucially important. So there's this thing called the American Gut Project, where they did 10,000 microbiome tests, 57 researchers. And out of that, they decided that in order to have a healthy gut microbiome, we need to consume 30 plant-based foods every week. John and I did a count. We got up to 18, I think. So you've got to work at this. Okay. And the other thing is, there was a study I found, this thing about there was more nutrition in a spear of broccoli 30 years ago than there is now. And there is a reason for that. The rising carbon dioxide levels are reducing the amount of nutrients in the products, in the produce. So that gives us a reason or an ability to understand why we need to consume or to be more focused on eating fruit and vegetables. Now, one piece of good news is that as far as glutathione is concerned, as long as you eat a diet of fresh fruit and vegetables, you're probably okay. There's no supplement needed. There's a list there of the main glutamine-containing foods, and glutamine converts into glutathione in the body. And the two supplements that will help your body do that, to convert the glutathione levels, convert from glutamine to glutathione, are vitamin C and selenium. And selenium comes in the selenium. And selenium comes in the sulfur-containing foods like egg yolk, your brassicas, the cabbages and garlic, that kind of thing, and Brazil nuts. So if someone is having a healthy diet, they should have plenty of glutathione in their body, and we want our babies to be well and truly topped up with glutathione. Vitamins B6 and B9. So B6 and B9 work and B12 work as a trilogy. So B6 is essential for normal neurodevelopment as well. Interestingly, deficiency is scaly dermatitis. I looked this up. I thought, you'd like to think you'd know that, but sometimes babies get these conditions, don't they? And so it's always worthwhile checking where possible. So B6 is found in organ meats, potatoes and fruit. So not many people eat organ meats. Plenty of people eat potatoes, and depending on who you are, that's whether you eat fruit or not. So B9, so this is so important, mentioned earlier. It helps to form DNA and RNA. We cannot manage without this. And so we have to check if the mother has got the MTHFR gene. And if she does, she needs to take B9, not just because she's pregnant, but she needs to take it anyway. So she has an ability to detoxify what comes into her body that is not needed. So this information comes from the Mayo Clinic, and I really recommend if you've got any questions about any health matter, the Mayo Clinic is a fantastic resource online. It's a not-for-profit medical centre, the largest one in America, and it incorporates integrative medicine. And I often go there when I'm just looking for a nice summary about something without screening through so many pages. Okay. So the other thing about B9 is it's essential with B12 to keep iron levels up. So it's a good example of iron. It might not be what someone needs. If they're anemic, they might need their B vitamins instead. So this 38-year-old woman, childbearing age, with a B9 in her boots. Deficiency of B9 is actually caused by low intake, unless you have the gene, the MTHFR gene. So vitamin D, 50% of Australians are deficient in vitamin D. One of the reasons for that is the use of sunscreen. And you hear the researchers shouting from the rooftops, there's more people going to get cancer from lack of vitamin D than they ever will from the sun. 4 million Australian adults are deficient in vitamin D. Now, vitamin D is one of those things that you can't take too much of. Pregnancy and breastfeeding, you can take lots and lots. And I found it interesting, the deficiency symptoms are anxiety. When you think of how much anxiety we have in our community, it's a worthwhile thing to think about. So this is a study, a couple of studies, one study. During pregnancy and breastfeeding, you can take 5,000 units, international units a day, without even thinking about it. There's very little toxicity in vitamin D, and if you do get toxicity symptoms, you can stop taking it and they go away. So the risk of low vitamin D is way higher than the risk of too much. So here is just two studies, one where they reduced the expected incidence of autism in children of mothers who already had one autistic child from 20% to 5%. And then two open label trials on children. The core symptoms in autism improved in 75% of autistic children. bang. And Lindley, didn't you have a child in your clinic who started talking the day after you gave vitamin D? Yeah. How much? Do you know how much?
Oh.
No. Yeah. So, that sort of bears out what this is saying. And then there was a randomised controlled trial done on this, and that confirmed these findings. And I love the title, Vitamin D and Autism, What's New? This has been known for many, many years, and yet how many parents of autistic children would know if they just gave their kids some vitamin D, they might see a benefit. There's a difference between replacing a deficiency and using a supplement as a therapeutic agent, which is what we can do with vitamin D. So using it as a therapeutic agent, you want to give any autistic child, after doing these studies, I wouldn't hesitate to do this, as higher doses as you like. Like a 3-year-old could probably tolerate 2,000-3,000 international units, a 5-year-old 5,000. What have you got to lose? Toxicity is so much less of a concern than the symptoms of autism. Zinc. Zinc is important for cellular proliferation and brain development. Deficiency isn't an issue, I would say globally, actually, and it's associated with the development of autism. And this next one about zinc is that it's very important for the integrity of the gut wall. So abnormal perinatal zinc levels found in ASD mice. So they can actually make mice autistic and then they test them. So zinc deficiency induces inflammation and chronic systemic inflammation. And low zinc compromises the intestinal barrier integrity. So you know about leaky gut and how many allergies and things people can have from leaky gut. So without even thinking about it, every pregnant woman can take a zinc supplement without any harm whatsoever. And with zinc supplements also, I learned this the hard way, it's best taken with food or it can cause nausea if you're giving in these high doses. 5 or 10 milligrams probably won't matter, but if you're giving 20 or more, taking with a meal is much nicer for your patient, and you don't want your patient to come back and say, that made me feel terrible, I'm not taking that again. A 38-year-old woman, her zinc is almost off the scale in deficiency. This is so common, it's unbelievable. The next important mineral to be aware of levels is iodine. This is the most compelling study out of all the studies I looked at. So the GIPD, it's about the processing of iodine. So ASD, ADHD, and dyslexia are the main manifestations of iodine deficiency. So mild to moderate iodine deficiency has permanent and cognitive psychosocial consequences in the offspring. And maternal iodine deficiency in the first trimester of pregnancy is linked to the suboptimal development of cognitive, language, and motor development. So remember, pregnant women are not tested for iodine. More emphasis should be placed on the adequate iodine intake in women prior to conception. And they emphasised in the study, really, if the baby is conceived and the woman is iodine deficient, then there is a problem. That was the main message. So here's a 34-year-old woman, childbearing age, low iodine. I think I've seen more iodine in the red, low, than zinc. Would you say? About the same. And here's a 33-year-old woman, zinc, iodine, The phosphorus means she's exhausted. There's the iodine there. Zinc. Maternal multivitamin supplement is associated with a reduced risk of autism in children. Systemic review and meta-analysis, nearly 250,000 children. The protective association between maternal multivitamin supplementation in the prenatal period and subsequent risk of ASD in children. My conclusion with this is that it may not actually take too much to turn the tide of autism. If we know about this and we can make sure that our girls, our daughters and our teenagers are taking enough of these supplements, who knows what can happen. And by the way, the researchers include minerals in their multivitamin supplement. So this is the summary from the meta-analysis, and I'm sorry it's so small, but I just thought it was quite a nice summary. So there's the vitamin A. This is what was in the supplement that reduced the autism risk. B1, B6, B9, B12, vitamin C, vitamin D, magnesium, because actually magnesium is necessary for the proper absorption of vitamin D, and zinc. Wouldn't it be great if it was that easy? Finally, we get to applying homeopathy to the treatment of autism. So now you have more idea of the potential obstacles to cure in an autistic case. So it's well within the homeopathic philosophy to treat autism. Hahnemann happened to write this a couple of 100 years ago, but actually, when you read it, it sounds like it could have been written by a researcher yesterday. Know what you're treating, understand your disease, recognise the obstacles to cure and how to remove them. Know what deranges the health and causes disease. Attention to fundamental causes. The cause that produces and maintains the disease should be removed. And then clean air, food and water, supplying exercise, suitable, unmedicinal food and drink. It sounds as fresh as anything, doesn't it? And homeopaths understand the impact of toxic exposures, and we all have the tools to treat them. Now, this is not a case, a homeopathic case, but I couldn't resist including it. So this is a case where a child's autistic expression was 100% eliminated by treating aspergillus, which is one of the aflatoxins that comes from, nuts and grains stored in food, and he had the child, I'm not sure what the details of the child, 2 antifungal drugs, rapid and complete recovery from an autistic spectrum disorder. How did they know it was there? They did a gut microbiome test. Now, 90% of autistic children would never ever have that test done, or more. Identify the cause, address the cause. This could have just as easily been with a nosode, a homeopathic nosode. Aspergillus, I'm sure it's in the remedy kit. And it also challenges the theory if children do recover from autism. They really do. And without this diagnosis, this kid would still have autism. So in identifying obstacles to cure, we need forensic case taking from preconception to the pregnancy and understanding the anomalies in the case. And when the well-selected remedy is given and works well, and then the patient relapses, you're really looking for a sustaining cause. So this is the range. Toxic exposures, nutritional deficiencies, previous maternal infection, medications, and testing. And why not add isopathy and tautopathy to the similimum, to the main remedy? I think that's becoming an increasingly popular way of practicing. So in homeopathy, I'll just give you a little recent history of treating obstacles to cure. So Dr. Jean Almiga, from Switzerland, in 2001, he produced a book called The Real Medicine. And he did sequential homeopathic therapy, and he was detoxing physical, emotional, and chemical insults in the reverse order of occurrence. And then a bit later, in the early 2000s, Dr. Tina Smits from Holland, from the Netherlands, developed cease therapy, complete elimination of autistic spectrum expression. He came to the same conclusion as the researchers at the beginning of this presentation, that there's so many different causes, it confounds the type of treatment that a person can have. And so he's talking about erasing the toxic imprints. It's a nice way of putting it. So in 2010, Tina Smits's book was released, and unfortunately he died soon after that. And then afterwards, his colleagues found his earlier work and published it into a book called Inspiring Homeopathy. But that was actually written in 2008, but published a few years later. And then Ton Jansen, who's the latest person doing this work, and his detoxification therapy is built on the cease method. And his latest book is called Fighting Fire with Fire. And I think most of us have seen and read that. So now I'd like to have a second look at the statement on autism that we looked at the beginning. There is no single known cause of autism. True. It's true. The science suggests that there are likely several causes, understatement. Strong links to developmental factors, of course, and genetic factors. True. But elaboration is needed. For any parent who's got an autistic child, they need a lot more information than that. But they're not going to get it on a website, on an autism website. We need to learn what affects neurodevelopment and recognise that genes can be switched on by environmental influences. And who is telling parents this? Anyone know? I don't. Absolute belief that autism is incurable. There's no information on autism websites that I've seen. Actually, there is one that I'll tell you in a moment. Common nutritional deficiencies of mothers and autistic children. What affects neurodevelopment? Impacts of medications on babies. Guidelines on how to minimise risk. Biomedical treatment. And available tests. So I would say 90% of the parents and families with autistic children don't know about this, maybe less. So there are no preventative strategies available to parents or practitioners. So there was one of the early developers of information on autism was Bernie Rimland in the 1970s. He had an autistic child and he did an awful lot of work, and he called his organisation DAN, Defeat Autism Now. And the opposition to that title was so strong, he had to change it to the ARI, or the Autism Research Institute. There's a reference to that in your notes. So there's no question that we know homeopathy has helped to remove autism diagnoses, and also biomedical treatment has helped children fully recover from autism. I have a story. This is a book that I wrote about, it's 10 years ago now, published. It's a whole lot of interviews I did with people with sort of horrible diagnoses and how they survived them. And there are 4 stories of 4 autistic children in here. And there's a story of Seamus that I just would like to read you the last part of. And this mother her son was moderately to severe autistic, pretty much from birth, and then he got worse after he turned 1. And she was one of those mums who would sell her house to pay for treatment, kind of thing. And part of the process that she discovered the benefits of kefir. And she and her husband started making coconut kefir, right? So this is the last 2 paragraphs of her story. We're hoping that the kefir business is eventually going to fund us properly, and then I can spend time with mothers. I never charge for any of my talks because I just want to help. I don't want other parents to feel the isolation that I felt. I couldn't take Seamus out, and nobody would come to the house and see us because he would scream at them. They felt that they were upsetting him. The mother I spoke to last Sunday sent me a text saying, it's just being able to speak to another mother who's been there. Unless you've been there, you don't realise how hard it can be. Seamus has been invited to 7 birthday parties this year. When he was in kindy, he never got invited to anything. I ran into an old neighbour the other day whose daughter is a psychologist working with autistic children. When I told her my children had recovered, she told me they must have been misdiagnosed. So even in the face of good news, yeah. So there are 2 other children. There are 2 families with 2 autistic kids in there. And also just the fact that biomedical treatment is not medically accepted. And so there's no tests done, there's no investigations made. Conclusions. Autistic spectrum disorders are an unaddressed public health issue. The majority of children tolerate vaccinations, and vaccines may be the spark that lights the fire in susceptible children. Autism may be preventable, and causes of autism and their prevention must become common knowledge. Practitioners can lead the way regarding parent education, and information is the strongest weapon available to the community. Future research. Homeopathic provings of medications, viruses, bacteria, mycotoxins, air pollution in specific cities to discover clearer specific symptom pictures to prescribe on. So this is a potential that we have in homeopathy. And the other thing is not necessarily homeopathic, but some epidemiological and longitudinal studies to compare the nutrient status and toxicity levels of autistic children and non-autistic children, and find out what those differences are. The researchers are doing that on some level, but we need more of it. My dream? A screening program to test vitamin D, iodine, B9 and zinc in all women 20 to 40 years old. Just like everyone gets a PKU test at birth, you know, and more public education. And you are the international world first people to hear this information, apart from that the conference, the truncated version of the conference in Brisbane last year. As a minimum, we need public education. And really, I feel like it's a call to action. And there's plenty of evidence. We're not living in a confused mystery of why children are so much more likely to develop autism. It's just that we don't know what the information is yet. It's a mystery why this information hasn't filtered through. It's like I feel like we're stuck in a time warp or something. And some of this research is 20, 30 years old. It's not just new. Resources. The amount of information on autism when you go online is overwhelming. Would you say that, Joanna? So what I've done is that's the handouts you've got there, is just narrowed it down to that. And if you did just looked at those resources, you would probably find everything you needed to know, because it can be a bit crazy otherwise. The resources that I've put in there are in-depth and they are reliable. So there's a great video on what causes autism. Brian Hooker, who's the Chief Scientific Advisor, Children's Health Defence. He has a son with autism, and it's a 40-minute video, and it's really down-to-earth, understandable, and worth the listen. His focus on vaccines is strong, not so much on nutrition. Informative, reliable autism websites. There are 4. The Mind Foundation is really, really good. It's all biomedical, and there's lots of good recovery stories. So for anyone who knows someone who has an autistic child and they're despairing, it's a great website for them to look at and see that some children can really do very well. Then there's the Global Autism Collaboration. So this lists all the autism organisations in the world. So that's your portal into the world of autism websites. And the Autism Research Institute is what used to be Defeat Autism Now. And that has got really great resources. They have free webinars on a regular basis. And they're all run by people who are accustomed to dealing with autism and they have experiences. It helps stop you going down rabbit holes. The websites lead to specific research and certain books. And if anyone here comes across any information at all, anywhere about preventing autism, please let me know. The Autism Project, Australian charity, most of you will know the Autism Project, acknowledges that it's not always easy to find information about autism. It takes a long time before it's acted on, and also accessing therapies that can help autistic children, like homeopathy. And the Autism Project's goal is to conduct more research on this children's health. Testing in Australia and New Zealand. These 3 labs actually only as a result of doing this, RN labs are in Brisbane and Nutripath is in Victoria, and I thought we still had to go to the US to get my mosaic diagnostics, but actually their RN labs offer the services of mosaic diagnostics. And some of these websites have got really good educational videos on them about various things. The tests, as I've said, help parents and practitioners understand what their child does need and what they don't need. and it helps them to avoid taking supplements that they don't need. And it also saves having to go to multiple practitioners and offers a treatment direction. And the tests are still expensive, but less expensive than they used to be. The Environmental Working Group is a wonderful not-for-profit resource on finding out what's in what you're buying, consumer guides on everything. I think I've got the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. There's some old ones of those. So that's a great resource. Now, these two guys, I'll show you the next slide as well, Dr. William Walsh and William Shaw. So they're the same age. They're both American. They both did the same work. Very easy to get them confused like I did. But William Shaw, he's written a couple of books that are older now because they're written like 15 years ago or so. And he is associated with Arian Labs in Brisbane. And John and I saw him at the seminar in Melbourne, and he said, it's not the vaccinations, it's the paracetamol that the kids get that creates the autism. So he's of that firm belief. And there's William Walsh, and he said he's done over 500,000 tests on autistic kids. So that's why he can say that 99% of them have oxidative stress. And both of these men are in their 80s, I'd say. So they've got like a 50, 60-year-old history of dealing with these conditions. They see the common themes. And his book, Nutrient Power, it's a most lucid, fabulous overview on all the brain disorders, not just autism, information on testing, access to videos, research, his website, and they run courses. And they're heavy-duty courses. John and I did one late last year, and it's very intense but really amazing. And then a light-hearted look at tonsil toxins. Slow Death by Rubber Duck is a fun read, but of a really unpleasant topic. But these guys tested all the toxins on themselves, did their blood tests before and after, and they came to a book fair in Australia and they did really well, their book. But that's a great place to start you can read it without feeling too miserable afterwards. And also they talk about how to detox. Tox in, tox out. And coming out soon is what I've presented today. In a way, it's going to be really for parents. Planning parenthood in the age of autism. And I would love to think that one day there's going to be a certain critical mass of people in the community who know enough. It's not even rocket science. If you're deficient, you have a supplement and it could do so much good. And that's it for me. And I'd like to thank two people. One is my husband, John Gamble, for his support in doing this with me, helping me. And the other one is to Lindley Jordan for her support. Thank you, Lindley and John. Thank you so much for watching my webinar. I so enjoyed putting it together and I hope you found it really helpful. For more information, you can one day buy my book, Planning Parenthood in the Age of Autism, which should be out by the end of 2024. And my website is karunahealthcare.com.au, and there is a blog there that you can reach. And please do contact me if you have anything you'd like to offer. Thank you.